There was a time when a German paycheck meant certainty. Not luxury, not excess, but something far rarer, predictability. You worked hard, you earned well, and the future made sense. Rent was manageable. Savings grew slowly but surely, and each generation expected to live a little better than the last. That expectation is quietly disappearing. Germany is still wealthy. The factories still run. The brands are still global. On paper, the economy looks strong enough to be envied, studied, and copied. But day to day, something feels off. Wages rise, yet wallets feel lighter. Employment is high, yet financial stress is everywhere. Young professionals do everything right, education, skills, stable jobs, and still hesitate before opening a rent listing. Nothing has gone wrong in the dramatic sense. There's no crash, no headline screaming disaster. Instead, there's drift. Living costs inch upward. Security becomes conditional. The promise of progress weakens, not suddenly but persistently. The system still works, just not as generously as it once did. This isn't about failure. It's about mismatch. An economy designed for stability now operating in a world that moves faster, costs more, and forgives less. Rules built for yesterday quietly shaping today and limiting tomorrow. Tonight, we're not uncovering corruption or predicting collapse. We're examining something more uncomfortable: how a country can do almost everything right and still leave its people feeling behind. If you enjoy videos that look past headlines and question comfortable assumptions, consider liking and subscribing. Planning for the future is easy until the future changes. This is the story of Germany's shrinking sense of prosperity, and it starts where the numbers stop explaining reality. There was a time when Germany felt economically invincible, not in the loud, boastful way of rising empires, but in the quiet confidence of a system that simply worked. In the decades following World War II, the country rebuilt itself brick by brick, factory by factory, paycheck by paycheck. This was the era of the Wirtschaftswunder, the economic miracle that turned ruins into industrial power and uncertainty into stability. Work was not just available, it was reliable. Wages rose steadily. Prices behaved predictably, and the relationship between effort and reward felt fair. You worked, you earned, you planned. Life followed a logical order. Families lived on one income without calling it sacrifice. Rent took a reasonable share of earnings. Groceries did not require mental math at the checkout, and holidays were something ordinary people expected, not luxuries reserved for the lucky. The idea of long-term security was baked into daily life. People trusted their employers, their banks, and their government. They trusted that if they followed the rules, the system would meet them halfway. This sense of comfort wasn't accidental. Germany's economic model was built on strong unions, powerful manufacturing, and a social contract that emphasized fairness over speed. Productivity gains translated into higher wages. Skilled labor was respected and rewarded. Apprenticeships led to careers, not temporary stops. The economy grew slowly, but it grew together. Inequality existed, but it was muted, contained, almost polite. Most importantly, expectations were aligned with reality. People didn't expect to become rich overnight. They expected something more valuable: predictability, a future that looked like the present, only slightly better. That expectation shaped behavior. Germans saved patiently, invested cautiously, and planned far ahead. Homes were bought with the assumption they would be owned for life. Jobs were chosen with loyalty in mind. Stability wasn't just an outcome, it was a cultural value. But even at the height of this comfort, the foundations were already shifting. Global markets were opening. Competition was intensifying. Technology was accelerating faster than institutions could adapt. These changes didn't announce themselves dramatically. They arrived quietly, wrapped in efficiency and innovation. Outsourcing was framed as modernization. Labor reforms were described as flexibility. Global supply chains promised resilience. At first, nothing seemed wrong. The numbers still looked good. Employment remained high. Exports surged. Germany's reputation as Europe's economic anchor only strengthened. Yet beneath the surface, the old balance was starting to tilt. The link between productivity and pay began to loosen. Costs edged upward, while wages moved more cautiously. The difference was subtle, easy to ignore, especially for those who remember harder times. Comfort has a way of masking danger. When life feels stable, small warning signs are easy to dismiss. After all, this was Germany. Things were supposed to work here, and for a long time they still did, just not quite as well as before. The miracle hadn't ended. It had simply begun to fade, slowly enough that few noticed. And by the time the change became obvious, the old comfort was already becoming a memory. Chapter 2. The Price of Stability. Germany's reputation for stability was not just economic. It was almost philosophical. Inflation was treated like a moral failure, a historical trauma etched deeply into national memory. Policymakers prioritized price stability above nearly everything else. And for decades, it worked. Prices rose slowly, predictably. Savings retained value. Wages appeared to keep pace. From the outside, Germany looked like proof that disciplined economics could tame uncertainty. But stability has a cost, and over time, that cost became harder to see. As globalization accelerated in the 1990s and early 2000s, Germany made a strategic choice. Instead of chasing rapid wage growth, it focused on competitiveness. Labor market reforms emphasized moderation. Wages were restrained. Contract became more flexible, and companies were encouraged to cut costs to survive in a more competitive world. The logic was simple. Keep exports strong, keep unemployment low, and everyone benefits eventually. For a while, the strategy worked beautifully. German products flooded global markets. Cars, machinery, chemicals, precision tools. The economy grew, unemployment fell, and Germany emerged as Europe's industrial backbone. Other countries struggled with debt and instability, while Germany was praised for discipline and foresight. Yet for workers, something subtle changed. Wages stopped rising at the pace people expected. Not falling, not dramatically stagnating, just growing more slowly than before. At the same time, everyday costs began creeping upward. Housing, healthcare contributions, transportation, energy, individually manageable, collectively exhausting. The math no longer felt as generous. The illusion of stability remained intact because the system avoided extremes. There was no sudden crisis, no mass layoffs, no hyperinflation headlines. Instead, there was a quiet squeeze. Take-home pay rose modestly, while deductions increased. Social contributions expanded to support an aging population. Taxes remained high to fund one of the world's most comprehensive welfare systems. Protection came at a price, and that price was flexibility. What made this especially confusing was that Germany still looked successful. GDP figures were strong, export numbers impressive, employment levels enviable. On paper, things were going well. But lived experience told a different story. People felt they were running faster to stay in the same place. Raises no longer translated into better lives. Savings grew more slowly, if at all. This gap between perception and reality created frustration. How could an economy be doing so well while individuals felt increasingly constrained? The answer lay in distribution. The benefits of growth were becoming uneven. Companies remained profitable. The state remained solvent. But households absorbed more risk, more cost, more responsibility. Stability, once a shared achievement, had quietly shifted into a personal burden. Workers were asked to be flexible, patient, and grateful, even as their economic breathing room narrowed. The system still functioned, but it demanded more effort for the same reward. Germany had chosen stability over speed, caution over consumption. It avoided dramatic crashes, but also postponed necessary adjustments. And as the years passed, the price of maintaining the illusion of stability became harder to ignore, because stability that never improves eventually feels like stagnation. And stagnation, no matter how well managed, erodes confidence. If there was one place where Germany's quiet economic tension became impossible to ignore, it was housing. For decades, renting had been normal, even respectable. Homeownership was not the obsession, it was elsewhere. Strong tenant protections, predictable rents, and long-term leases made renting feel secure. Housing was not an investment gamble. It was a utility, a place to live, not a financial battlefield. Then the cities changed. Berlin, Munich, Hamburg, Frankfurt, once affordable, even relaxed, they transformed into magnets for opportunity. Startups arrived. International talent poured in. Students, professionals, investors, all chasing the same limited space. Demand surged. Supply did not. Construction lagged behind population growth, constrained by regulation, bureaucracy, and local resistance. Rents began to rise. Slowly at first, then unmistakably. What had once taken a manageable portion of income started demanding more. New tenants paid far more than old ones. Young people entering the workforce faced prices their parents never imagined. The math no longer worked the way it used to. What made this especially painful was that wages did not rise alongside rents. A modest salary that once guaranteed independence now barely covered a small apartment. Moving closer to work became a luxury. Saving for the future meant compromising in the present. The promise that effort would lead to comfort began to feel hollow. Government interventions tried to slow the damage. Rent controls were introduced. Caps were debated, passed, challenged, overturned. Each measure offered temporary relief, but none addressed the underlying shortage. Investors adapted faster than regulators. Loopholes multiplied. Renovations justified higher rents. Supply remained tight. Meanwhile, ownership drifted further out of reach. Rising prices, stricter lending rules, and stagnant real wages made buying a home feel unrealistic for many. The traditional German idea of stability through housing weakened. Renting became less secure. Buying became unattainable. The middle ground vanished. Housing costs did more than strain budgets. They reshaped lives. People delayed having children. Shared apartments stretched into adulthood. Commuting times grew longer as workers moved farther from city centers. Social mobility slowed, not because ambition disappeared, but because geography imposed limits. Perhaps most unsettling was how normalized the struggle became. Complaining about rent turned into a shared ritual, almost a joke. But behind the humor was resignation, a sense that this was just how things were now. Housing exposed a truth that numbers had hidden. Germany's economy was still strong, but its rewards were no longer evenly felt. A basic necessity had become a source of anxiety. And once shelter feels uncertain, everything else does too. The housing crunch wasn't an isolated problem. It was a signal, a warning that the old guarantees no longer applied. And it raised a troubling question that would echo across the economy. If even a place to live was becoming a financial challenge, what did that say about the future of work, wages, and security in the world's most famously stable economy? If housing was the first shock, daily life delivered the slow, constant pressure. Nothing dramatic. No single receipt that caused outrage. Just a quiet realization, repeated week after week, that money didn't stretch the way it used to. Groceries became more expensive, not overnight, but enough that familiar brands slowly disappeared from shopping carts. Energy bills climbed, then climbed again. Public transportation fares edged upward, even as service reliability became a national punchline. The strange part was how normal it all felt. Prices rose under the banner of quality, sustainability, modernization. Organic food cost more. Renewable energy surcharges were framed as moral responsibility. Climate goals came with financial footnotes. Individually, each increase seemed reasonable. Together, they reshaped household budgets. Salaries technically increased, but mostly on paper. After taxes, social contributions, health insurance, pension payments, and solidarity surcharges, the take-home amount felt stubbornly flat. The difference between gross and net income became a recurring frustration, especially for middle earners who qualified for few benefits but paid a large share of the system's costs. Daily decisions began to carry emotional weight. Eating out turned from routine to treat. Vacations shrank in length or ambition. Small luxuries required justification. People didn't feel poor, but they felt constrained. There was a persistent sense of having less room to breathe. What made this particularly unsettling was the lack of a clear culprit. Prices weren't out of control. Wages weren't collapsing. Everything was just slightly worse than before. A few euros more here, a few cents there, the kind of erosion that's hard to fight because it never announces itself loudly enough. The economy was still praised for resilience. Germany remained a model of moderation, but moderation, experienced daily, began to feel like quiet deprivation. The system asked people to absorb rising costs in exchange for long-term stability, yet the long-term seemed permanently delayed. The cost of daily life became the most tangible evidence that something fundamental had shifted. Not a crisis, but a recalibration. And recalibrations, when imposed slowly and unevenly, often feel like betrayal. People adapted, as they always had, but adaptation has limits. And as expenses continued their steady climb, the question grew harder to ignore. If everyday life required more sacrifice than before, where exactly was the benefit of all this economic success going? The answer, increasingly, lay beyond Germany's borders. Chapter 5: Global Pressures and Outsourcing. Germany's economic strength has always been global. Its factories didn't just serve domestic demand, they fed the world. Cars rolled onto ships. Machinery crossed continents. Precision engineering became a national signature. But globalization, once a source of strength, slowly became a source of pressure. To stay competitive, German companies faced a dilemma. Global markets demanded lower prices, faster delivery, constant innovation. Labor, once protected pillar, became a cost to manage. Production shifted east, then south, then overseas. Supply chains stretched across borders in search of efficiency. This wasn't presented as loss, but as strategy. Outsourcing was framed as specialization. Germany would keep high-value work, while cheaper tasks moved elsewhere. In theory, everyone won. In practice, the boundaries blurred. Middle-skilled jobs thinned out. Stable manufacturing roles were replaced with temporary contracts, subcontracting, and service positions. Wages faced downward pressure, not because workers became less productive, but because alternatives existed elsewhere. The bargaining power that once defined German labor weakened quietly. At the same time, companies posted strong profits. Shareholders benefited. Export numbers impressed. From a macroeconomic view, the model still worked. But for many workers, the promise that globalization would raise all boats felt increasingly abstract. The irony was striking. Germany's success depended on global demand, yet global competition undermined the very wage stability that made that success possible. The system optimized for efficiency, not comfort. Growth continued, but security thinned. Even highly skilled workers felt the shift. Engineers competed internationally. IT professionals faced constant pressure to justify their pay. Loyalty mattered less than flexibility. Careers became less linear, more fragile. Globalization didn't destroy German wages. It diluted them, spread them thinner across borders, markets, and risks. And because the process was gradual, it rarely sparked outrage. Instead, it normalized uncertainty. The global economy rewarded adaptability. Germany adapted well as a country. Individuals, however, were left to adapt on their own. As the pressure from abroad intensified, another change emerged closer to home, one that reshaped not just wages, but the very structure of work itself. Germany entered the modern economy with confidence, but it emerged altered. Work no longer looked the way it once did. Permanent contracts, predictable hours, and clear career paths gave way to flexibility, efficiency, and risk-sharing. These changes were introduced as modernization. Few realized how deeply they would affect earnings. Wage stagnation didn't arrive as a freeze. It arrived as a slowdown. Raises became smaller. Promotions took longer. Job changes no longer guaranteed significant pay increases. For many, income plateaued earlier than expected. Even as experience grew, the rise of part-time work reshaped the labor market. Officially, employment soared. Unemployment fell, but the quality of work changed. Many positions offered fewer hours, lower security, and limited benefits. On paper, people were employed. In reality, many were underutilized. Temporary contracts became common, especially among younger workers. The promise of stability shifted further into the future. Internships blurred into jobs. Jobs blurred into projects. Planning became difficult when income was uncertain. Even full-time workers felt the effects. Collective bargaining weakened in some sectors. Union influence declined. Performance-based pay replaced predictable progression. Risk shifted from institutions to individuals. The paradox was painful. Germany had more jobs than ever, yet fewer guarantees. Productivity remained high, but wages failed to reflect it. The link between economic success and personal prosperity loosened. This created a generational divide. Older workers remembered steady growth. Younger workers learned caution. Saving fell harder. Long-term commitments felt risky. Optimism became conditional. Wage stagnation wasn't just an economic issue. It reshaped behavior. People delayed milestones. They hedged bets. They lowered expectations. The economy continued to function, even impress. But beneath the surface, the social contract had changed. Stability was no longer assumed. It had to be earned, defended, constantly renegotiated. And as Germany adjusted to this new reality, another force began to apply pressure from every direction at once. A force that didn't negotiate, didn't adapt, and didn't care about moderation. Inflation was waking up again. For years, inflation in Germany felt like a relic of the past, something discussed in textbooks and remembered through stories from grandparents. Prices rose gently, predictably, almost politely. Then, almost without warning, inflation returned to daily conversation, not as a sudden explosion, but as an unignorable presence that crept into every receipt, every bill, every household calculation. Energy was the first shock. Heating costs jumped. Electricity prices surged. What had once been background expenses suddenly demanded attention. Families adjusted thermostats, delayed upgrades, and absorbed increases that felt disproportionate to their wages. Fuel prices followed, raising transportation costs and quietly inflating the price of everything else. Food did not escape. Staples became noticeably more expensive. Brands shrank packages while raising prices. The psychological effect was immediate. People trusted the numbers less. The same paycheck bought fewer essentials, and no amount of budgeting could fully compensate. What made inflation especially painful was timing. It arrived after years of wage restraint, when households already felt stretched. Savings, once a source of comfort, lost value. Fixed incomes suffered the most. The careful planning that defined German financial culture suddenly felt inadequate. Inflation also exposed inequality. Those with assets saw protection. Those without felt pure loss. Renters absorbed higher costs. Homeowners with fixed-rate mortgages fared better. The economy didn't suffer evenly. Official explanations emphasized global factors. Supply chain disruptions, energy shocks, geopolitical instability. All true, but explanations didn't soften the impact. People didn't feel richer because inflation had a cause. They felt poorer because it had a consequence. Trust, once damaged, is hard to restore. Inflation challenged Germany's deepest economic promise, stability. And when stability cracks, anxiety fills the gap. Just as households struggled to adjust, another layer of pressure became impossible to ignore. The very system designed to protect citizens was also reshaping their paychecks. Germany's social system is one of the most comprehensive in the world. Healthcare, pensions, unemployment insurance, child benefits. It cushions risk, smooths shocks, and prevents extremes. In times of crisis, it works. But in times of slow strain, it reveals its trade-offs. Taxes and mandatory contributions take a significant share of income, especially from middle earners. Gross salaries look respectable. Net pay tells a different story. Health insurance premiums rise. Pension contributions increase. Social solidarity comes with a monthly invoice. The irony is hard to miss. People feel financially pressured, yet contribute more to support the system. The state expands protections to manage uncertainty, but those protections reduce take-home pay, limiting personal flexibility. This creates a strange tension. Citizens value the safety net, but resent its weight. Cutting it feels dangerous. Expanding it feels expensive. Reform becomes politically delicate, often postponed. Demographics complicate everything. An aging population means fewer workers supporting more retirees. Contributions rise. Benefits strain. The math becomes less forgiving. Younger workers, already facing housing and wage pressures, inherit more responsibility. Government policy attempts balance. Subsidies soften energy costs. Child benefits support families. Rent regulations aim for fairness. But each intervention creates new distortions. The system grows more complex, harder to navigate, harder to trust. The result is frustration, not rebellion. People don't reject the model. They question its sustainability. They wonder whether they are paying for a past designed for a future that no longer exists. As economic pressure spreads across paychecks and policies, it begins to affect something less visible but more powerful than money. It affects how people feel. Chapter 9, The Psychological Toll. Economic strain doesn't just change budgets, it changes minds. The realization that effort no longer guarantees progress erodes motivation quietly but deeply. People begin to question choices they once felt confident about. Stress becomes background noise. Financial planning turns cautious. Risk feels dangerous. Optimism feels naive. Even those doing well sense fragility. One unexpected expense feels heavier than it should. The psychological shift reshapes society. People delay starting families. Career changes feel risky. Entrepreneurship feels intimidating. Consumption slows, not because people don't want more, but because uncertainty makes restraint feel safer. Comparisons worsen the effect. Social media showcases lifestyles that feel increasingly unattainable. Expectations collide with reality. The gap between effort and outcome feels personal, even when it's structural. What's most unsettling is the loss of trust, not in institutions entirely, but in outcomes. People follow rules, work hard, contribute, yet feel stuck. The system hasn't failed spectacularly. It has disappointed gradually. This mental shift matters because economies run on confidence. When confidence erodes, behavior changes. Spending slows. Risk-taking declines. The future feels smaller. Germany remains orderly, functional, calm. But beneath the calm, there's unease. A sense that the path forward is less clear than before. And yet, all these pressures converge toward a single question. Not about the past. Not about blame. But about what comes next. A new reality. Germany's economic story isn't one of collapse. It's one of transition. The old model delivers stability, prosperity, and trust. The new reality demands adaptation, flexibility, and difficult choices. Housing remains tight. Wages face pressure. Inflation reshapes expectations. Demographics challenge sustainability. Global competition intensifies. None of these forces act alone. Together, they redefine what a good life looks like. The comfortable assumptions of the past no longer apply. One income may not suffice. Stability may require mobility. Security may come from skills rather than institutions. This doesn't mean decline is inevitable. Germany still has strengths: education, infrastructure, innovation, social cohesion. But leveraging them requires acknowledging discomfort, not masking it. Policy decisions matter. So do cultural shifts, balancing protection with incentive, fairness with flexibility, stability with growth will define the next chapter. The question is not whether Germany can adapt. It has before. The question is how quickly and at what cost. For now, salaries feel smaller, pressure feels heavier, and the future feels uncertain. But uncertainty is not destiny. It is a moment. What Germany chooses to do with that moment will determine whether today's quiet erosion becomes tomorrow's renewal, or whether the economic powerhouse learns, too late, that strength alone is not enough.